The lights flickered across the massive space station as another energy pulse hit the shields. Maya Rodriguez pressed her face against the thick glass window and watched the orange gas giant spinning slowly below. The station called Nexus Prime was the size of a small city, floating in the darkness between stars. It had been her home for 3 months now, and she still couldn't believe she was really here. Another communication blackout in Sector 7, announced Dr. Amy Chun, walking up beside Maya with a datapad in her hands. That makes 12 star systems now. The Galactic Council is getting worried. Maya nodded and looked around the main engineering bay. The room was huge, with a ceiling that stretched up 3 stories high. Dozens of alien beings worked at strange-looking computers and control panels that seemed to glow with their own light. Some of the aliens had 6 arms and moved like dancers. Others looked like giant insects with wings that buzzed as they worked. A few were made of pure energy and floated through the air like living lightning. In the center of the room sat the thing that had brought them all here. The artifact looked like a smooth black egg about the size of a car. Its surface was covered in patterns that seemed to shift and change when nobody was looking directly at it. Maya had been studying it for weeks, but she still didn't understand what it was supposed to do. The Zephyrians are trying their neural interface again, Amy said, pointing to a group of blue-skinned aliens with large heads and 6 arms each. They had thick cables running from their skulls to a machine that hummed with power. They think they can connect their minds directly to the artifact. Maya watched as the Zephyrians closed their eyes and began to concentrate. The machine made a high-pitched whining sound and sparks flew from the cables. One of the aliens jerked back with a cry of pain, pulling the cables from his head. Green blood dripped from small wounds where the connectors had been attached. "Failed again," said a deep voice behind them. Maya turned to see Commander Ziegler approaching. The Draconis was 8 feet tall with scales that looked like black metal. His yellow eyes glowed in the dim light, and his teeth were as sharp as knives. "These humans and their primitive suggestions waste our time." Maya felt her cheeks turn red, but she kept quiet. She had learned that arguing with Ziegler only made him more angry. The commander had made it clear from the beginning that he thought humans were too simple to understand advanced technology. "The artifact has been blocking hyperspace communication for 6 months, Ziegler continued, his voice growing louder. "Our best scientists from 12 worlds have worked on this problem. We do not need advice from a species that only learned to travel between stars 50 years ago." Near the artifact, a group of insect-like aliens called the Cathara were setting up their own equipment. Their technology was alive, made from specially grown plants and animals that could think and process information. Maya watched as they guided a creature that looked like a cross between a snake and a computer toward the black surface. The biocomputer touched the artifact with its tail and immediately began to shake violently. Its skin changed from green to bright red, and it made a sound like a screaming bird. The Cathara quickly pulled it back, but the damage was done. The creature's eyes had gone white, and it lay still on the floor. "The organic interface has been damaged beyond repair," announced the lead Cathara in a voice that sounded like wind through leaves. "The artifact contains some form of protective system that destroys any technological contact." Maya stepped forward. "What if we tried a different approach? Maybe something simpler?" Ziegler turned his burning yellow eyes on her. "Simpler? Lieutenant Rodriguez, this device was created by a civilization that existed before your species discovered fire. It has defeated the most advanced technology in the galaxy. What could your people possibly contribute?" Maya felt the weight of every alien stare in the room. She had grown up on a farm in Montana, fixing broken tractors with her father. She had joined the space program because she loved solving problems, not because she thought she was smarter than everyone else. But something about the artifact reminded her of the old machines back home. "I just think maybe we're making it too complicated," she said quietly. "Sometimes the simplest solution is the right one." The commander's laugh was like the sound of breaking glass. "Your human tools are made of metal and wire. Our technology can manipulate matter at the quantum level. We can bend space and time itself. And you think we should try something simpler? Across the room, the luminals were preparing for their attempt. These beings were made of pure energy and looked like small stars floating in the air. They had no physical form, but they could control electricity and radiation better than any other species. Maya watched as they surrounded the artifact with a field of bright light. The light grew brighter and brighter, until Maya had to look away. She heard a sound like thunder, and when she looked back, the luminals were scattered across the room like broken light bulbs. The artifact sat unchanged, as dark and mysterious as ever. "The energy matrix is incompatible," one of the luminals said in a voice like crackling fire. "The artifact absorbs our essence and converts it to some other form. We cannot approach it safely." Maya walked closer to the artifact, ignoring the worried looks from the other humans on the team. Up close, she could see that the surface wasn't perfectly smooth. There were tiny ridges and valleys in the patterns, so small that most people would never notice them. But Maya's father had taught her to pay attention to details. "The patterns look worn," she said to Amy, "like something has been touching them for a long time." "That's impossible," said Dr. Ryan Brooks, the head of the human science team. "The artifact has been sealed in a protective field since we found it. Nothing has touched it in thousands of years." Maya ran her fingers through the air just above the artifact's surface, not quite touching it. She could feel something strange, like a gentle warmth that seemed to pulse with a rhythm almost like a heartbeat. The patterns weren't random at all. They formed a kind of path that spiraled around the artifact from bottom to top. "Lieutenant Rodriguez, step away from the device," Ziegler ordered. "Your primitive scanning equipment might interfere with our next attempt." Maya looked down at her belt, where she carried a simple toolkit that her father had given her. Compared to the quantum scanners and neural interfaces around her, her tools looked like toys. She had a basic multimeter, a few screwdrivers, and a small flashlight. Nothing that could hurt a device that had survived for millions of years. But as she looked at the artifact again, she began to wonder if maybe that was exactly what they needed. Maya couldn't sleep that night. She kept thinking about the artifact and the way it had felt when she held her hand near it. The warm, pulsing sensation reminded her of something, but she couldn't remember what. She got up from her small bed in the human quarters and walked to the window that looked out at the stars. The memory came to her suddenly, as clear as if it had happened yesterday. She was 8 years old, standing in her father's garage in Montana. The old tractor had broken down again, and her father Jake was lying underneath it with grease on his hands and face. "Maya, come here and help me," he had called out. "Put your hand on the engine block, right there next to the starter." Maya had pressed her small hand against the metal, and she could feel the engine's warmth even though it wasn't running. There was a vibration in the metal, so faint that most people would never notice it. But her father had taught her to pay attention to things like that. "Feel that?" Jake had asked. "The engine is telling us what's wrong. It's not getting fuel to the right place. We don't need fancy computer diagnostics to figure that out. We just need to listen." Maya smiled at the memory. Her father had been the best mechanic in 3 counties, and he had never owned a computer diagnostic tool in his life. He could tell what was wrong with any machine just by touching it, listening to it, and watching how it moved. The next morning, Maya went to the station's library to research the artifact. Dr. Amy Chun was already there, surrounded by stacks of data tablets and holographic displays showing star charts and ancient writing. "Find anything interesting?" Maya asked, sitting down across from her friend. Amy looked up with tired eyes. "I've been reading about the civilization that might have created the artifact. They called themselves the Builders, and they lived about 2 million years ago. But here's the strange part. They weren't technologically advanced at all." Maya leaned forward. "What do you mean?" "According to the records, the Builders were actually quite primitive compared to most galactic civilizations. They had no computers, no advanced materials, no energy weapons. They built everything by hand using simple tools and natural materials. Then how did they create something that our best technology can't even understand?" Maya asked. Amy pulled up a holographic image showing the ruins of an ancient city. The buildings were made of stone and wood with no metal or plastic in sight. That's exactly what I've been wondering. Look at this archaeological data from their home world. Everything they built was designed to last forever, but it was also designed to be repaired and maintained by people with simple tools, Maya studied. The image. The buildings had smooth surfaces with worn areas where countless hands had touched them over the centuries. The doors and windows were perfectly sized for beings about the same size as humans. Everything looked functional and practical, not decorative or flashy. They sound like farmers, Maya said. Like people who worked with their hands. That's exactly what I was thinking, Amy agreed. The builders were a practical people. They didn't create things to show off their technology. They created things to solve problems. Maya spent the rest of the day thinking about the builders while she watched the alien teams work on the artifact. The Quantum Syndicate had arrived that morning with equipment that looked like it belonged in a science fiction movie. Their machines could manipulate individual atoms and bend space-time itself. Maya didn't understand how any of it worked, but she could see that it wasn't working on the artifact. Quantum resonance failure, announced the lead syndicate scientist, a tall gray being with 3 eyes. The artifact exists in a state of quantum flux that prevents molecular manipulation. Commander. Ziegther paced around the room like a caged animal. 6 months, he growled. 6 months, and we are no closer to solving this problem. The communication blackouts are spreading, trade routes are failing. The Galactic Council is losing patience. Maya watched as the ethereal collective prepared. Their equipment. These beings looked like ghosts made of silver mist, and they could phase in and out of different dimensions. Their plan was to shift the artifact into another dimension where it might be easier to study. Beginning dimensional phase shift, announced the lead ethereal in a voice like wind through empty rooms. Caution, timeline distortion possible. The air around the artifact began to shimmer and twist. Maya felt a strange sensation in her stomach, like she was falling even though she was standing still. The artifact flickered in and out of existence, sometimes looking solid and sometimes looking like it was made of smoke, and something went wrong. The shimmer turned into a violent storm of energy that filled the room with blinding light. Maya heard screams and shouts as aliens dove for cover behind their equipment. When the light faded, 3 members of the ethereal collective were lying on the floor, their silver forms barely visible. Medical team to engineering bay? Amy called. Into her communicator. We have casualties. Maya knelt beside one of the injured ethereals. The being was barely conscious, its form flickering between solid and mist. What happened? She asked gently. The artifact. It has defenses, the ethereal whispered. Old defenses. It knows the difference between complex and simple. Maya felt a chill run down her spine. What do you mean? But the ethereal had already faded back into unconsciousness. The medical team carried the injured beings away, leaving the artifact sitting in the center of the room as dark and mysterious as ever. That evening, Maya called her father on the long-range communicator. The signal took several minutes to reach Earth, but hearing his voice made her feel better. You sound worried, kiddo, Jake said. His face appeared on the screen, older and grayer than when she had left Earth, but still wearing the same work clothes he had worn in his garage for 30 years. I am worried, Dad. We're trying to solve this problem, but every time we use advanced technology, it fails. The artifact seems to fight back against anything complex. Jake was quiet for a moment, thinking. I once worked on a tractor that had the same problem. Every time the owner tried to use some fancy diagnostic computer on it, the engine would shut down completely. Turned out the electrical system was so old that it couldn't handle the modern equipment. What did you do? Maya asked. I used the simplest tools I had, a basic multimeter, a test light, and my hands. Turned out the problem was just a loose connection that had been there for 20 years. The fancy computers couldn't find it because they were looking for something complicated. Maya stared at the screen, thinking about her father's words. Dad, what if the artifact isn't broken? What if it's just designed to work with simple tools? Then maybe you should try the simple approach, Jake said with a smile. Sometimes the most advanced solution is the one that doesn't need to be advanced at all. After the call ended, Maya sat in her quarters and thought about everything she had learned. The builders were a practical people who worked with their hands. The artifact fought back against complex technology but seemed to respond to simple touch. And somewhere in the back of her mind, she was starting to get an idea about how to solve the problem. But first, she would need to convince the others that sometimes the best way forward was to go back to basics. The emergency meeting was called at dawn, station time. Maya had never seen so many important aliens in one place before. The council chamber was filled with representatives from every major species in the galaxy. Their voices created a symphony of strange sounds, clicks, whistles, electronic beeps, and languages that hurt Maya's ears just to hear. 17 star systems are now cut off from all communication, announced Chancellor Vexhai, a towering crystalline being whose body sparkled with inner light. The economic losses are beyond calculation. Entire worlds are isolated. We are facing the collapse of galactic civilization. Maya sat with the other humans in the back row, trying to make herself invisible. She watched as Commander Ziegther stood up to address the council. His black scales gleamed under the harsh lights, and his yellow eyes burned with frustration. The artifact continues to resist all attempts at activation, Ziegther reported. We have tried every form of advanced technology known to science. Quantum manipulation, dimensional shifting, bioneural interfaces, energy matrix conversion. Nothing works. A delegate from the hive mind, a creature that looked like a walking tree with hundreds of eyes, spoke up. Perhaps the artifact is not meant to be activated. Perhaps it is a weapon designed to destroy communication networks. No, said Dr. Amy Chun, standing up from her seat. Our research shows that the artifact was created by a peaceful civilization. The builders were not warriors, they were problem solvers. The tree-like delegate's eyes all turned to focus on Amy. Then why does it resist our efforts? Why does it fight us? Maya felt her heart beating faster. She had been thinking about this question for days, and she thought she might have an answer. But speaking up in front of the entire Galactic Council seemed impossible. These beings controlled the fate of trillions of people across thousands of worlds. The communication blackouts are spreading faster, said another delegate, this one from the Silicon Collective. The robot-like being's voice was flat and emotionless. At current rates, the entire galaxy will be isolated within 6 months. Chancellor Vexhai's crystalline form pulsed with red light. We need solutions, not more problems. Commander Ziegther, what is your next plan? Ziegther's claws scraped against the metal floor as he shifted his weight. We are preparing one final attempt. The temporal engineers have agreed to try a chronoton pulse. We will attempt to reverse the artifact's timeline to a point before it was activated. Maya felt a chill run down her spine. Time manipulation was one of the most dangerous technologies in the galaxy. She had heard stories of entire star systems being erased from existence by temporal experiments gone wrong. The risk is significant, Ziegther continued. But we have no other choice. If this fails, we will have to consider destroying the artifact completely, and lose any chance of restoring communications? Maya found herself saying. The words came out before she could stop them, and suddenly every alien in the room was. Looking at her, Chancellor Vexhai's crystal eyes focused on Maya like laser beams. The human speaks. Do you have something to contribute, Lieutenant Rodriguez? Maya's mouth went dry. She could feel the weight of history pressing down on her. I just think that destroying the artifact would be a mistake. If we destroy it, we'll never understand how it works. We'll never be able to fix the communication problem. Ziegther's laugh was like breaking glass. The human thinks she understands something that has defeated our greatest minds. Tell us, Lieutenant, what is your brilliant solution? Maya stood up slowly, her legs shaking. I don't have a solution yet. But I think we're approaching this wrong. We keep trying to overpower the artifact with advanced technology. What if it's designed to resist that kind of approach? Designed by whom? Demanded the hive mind delegate. The builders had no advanced technology. They were primitives. Maybe that's exactly the point, Maya said, her voice growing stronger. Maybe they created something that could only be operated by people who think like them. People who work with their hands instead of relying on machines. The room erupted in alien laughter and angry chattering. Maya felt her face turn red, but she forced herself to keep talking. Every time we use complex technology on the artifact, it fights back. But when I just put my hand near it, I can feel something. A warmth, a pulse, like it's trying to communicate. Human imagination, Ziegler said dismissively. Your species is known for seeing patterns where none exist. The meeting continued for 3 more hours. Maya listened as the delegates argued about time manipulation, dimensional warfare, and the possibility of evacuating entire star systems. Nobody wanted to hear about simple solutions or working with hands. After the meeting, Maya walked back to the engineering bay with Amy and Dr. Ryan Brooks. The artifact sat in the center of the room, surrounded by the wreckage of failed experiments. Burn marks on the walls showed where the luminals had tried to overload it with energy. Twisted metal debris marked the spot where the quantum syndicates' equipment had exploded. They're really going to try time manipulation, Amy said quietly. The temporal engineers arrived this morning. They're setting up their equipment now. Maya watched as the new team of aliens worked around the artifact. The temporal engineers looked like floating jellyfish made of silver metal. They moved slowly and carefully, setting up machines that hummed with dangerous energy. This is insane. Maya said, time manipulation near a communications hub? If something goes wrong, they could create a temporal loop that cuts off half the galaxy permanently. The Council has made their decision, Dr. Brooks said. We're just observers now. Our job is to document what happens and try to learn from it. Maya walked closer to the artifact, staying well away from the temporal engineers and their equipment. Up close, she could see that the patterns on the surface were even more complex than she had thought. They formed a kind of maze that spiraled around the artifact from top to bottom. It's beautiful, she said to herself, like a work of art. One of the temporal engineers floated over to her. Please maintain distance, human. The chronoton field will be dangerous to organic life forms. Maya stepped back, but she kept watching the artifact. The patterns seemed to shift and change as she looked at them, always staying just at the edge of understanding. It reminded her of something her father had said about old machines. They had their own personality, their own way of communicating with the people who worked on them. Beginning temporal sequence, announced the lead temporal engineer. Chronoton pulse in 60 seconds. Maya felt the air around her begin to vibrate. The artifact started to glow with a faint blue light, and she could hear a sound like distant thunder. The patterns on the surface moved faster now, spinning and dancing in ways that made her eyes water. 30 seconds, called the engineer. Maya closed her eyes and tried to think. What would her father do? How would he approach a problem like this? The answer came to her suddenly, so clear that she wondered why she hadn't thought of it before. Stop, she shouted. You're making it angry, but it was too late. The chronoton pulse fired, and the artifact exploded with light that could be seen from 3 star systems away. The explosion of light lasted only 3 seconds, but it felt like hours. Maya was thrown backward by the force of the energy wave, her body hitting the metal wall with a sound like a bell ringing. Around her, aliens screamed and dove for cover. As their equipment sparked and caught fire, when the light faded, Maya opened her eyes and saw chaos. The temporal engineers were scattered across the floor, their silver forms flickering in and out of reality. 3 of them had been caught in a time loop and were repeating the same motion over and over again. The artifact sat in the center of the room, completely unchanged except for a new pattern of lines that glowed with soft blue light. Medical teams to engineering bay, Amy called into her communicator. We have multiple casualties in temporal displacement. Maya pulled herself to her feet, ignoring the pain in her back and shoulders. She looked around the room at the destruction. Half the alien equipment was destroyed, and the other half was showing error messages in languages she couldn't read. The artifact pulsed with that same warm light she had felt before, but now it seemed stronger, more urgent. Commander Ziegler stood up slowly. green blood running from a cut on his scaled forehead. His yellow eyes burned with fury as he looked at the artifact. "Enough," he growled. "This device has defeated our best technology and injured our people. It must be destroyed before it kills someone." "No," Maya said, stepping forward. "We're so close to understanding it. Don't you see? Every time we attack it with complex technology, it gets stronger. It's trying to teach us something." Ziegler turned his burning gaze on her. "The human speaks of teaching? This device is clearly a weapon designed to resist our civilization's advancement. It must be eliminated." Maya felt something building inside her chest, a combination of frustration and determination that reminded her of her father when he was working on a particularly stubborn machine. She had watched the greatest minds in the galaxy fail because they couldn't see past their own technology. They had tools that could reshape reality itself, but they couldn't solve a simple puzzle. "Mind if I try without the gear?" she said quietly. The room fell silent. Every alien stared at her with expressions that ranged from confusion to amusement. Dr. Brooks stepped forward, his face pale with worry. "Maya, you can't be serious. This thing just created a temporal distortion that nearly killed half the team. What makes you think you can succeed where quantum computers have failed?" Maya walked toward the artifact, her hands empty except for her father's old toolkit hanging from her belt. "Because I'm not trying to conquer it, I'm trying to understand it." "This is madness," Ziegler said. "The human has no advanced training, no sophisticated equipment, no understanding of quantum mechanics or temporal theory. She will be destroyed." "Maybe," Maya said, not stopping. "But at least I won't be making the same mistake everyone else has made." Amy grabbed her arm. "Maya, please. Think about this rationally. If something happens to you, who's going to solve the communication problem?" Maya turned to look at her friend. "Amy, you said the builders were a practical people. They worked with their hands. They built things to last forever, but they also built things that could be fixed by people with simple tools. What if this isn't a weapon or a test? What if it's just broken and it's been waiting 2 million years for someone to fix it?" Before anyone could stop her, Maya walked to the artifact and knelt down beside it. Up close, she could see details that no scanner had detected. The patterns weren't just decorative, they were worn smooth in some places, as if countless hands had touched them over the centuries. The blue glow was strongest at certain points, creating a path that spiraled around the artifact's surface. "The patterns are a guide," she said to herself. "They're showing me where to touch." Maya placed her hand on the bottom of the artifact, at the start of the spiral pattern. The moment her skin made contact, she felt a surge of warmth that traveled up her arm. The artifact pulsed with light, and she could hear a sound like a heartbeat echoing through the metal. "It's alive," she whispered. "Not like an animal, but like a machine with a soul." Following the worn patterns, Maya moved her hand slowly around the artifact's surface. Each touch caused the blue glow to grow brighter, and she could feel the device responding to her. It was like having a conversation without words, an exchange of understanding that bypassed all the complexity of language and technology. Behind her, she could hear the aliens arguing about what to do. Some wanted to pull her away from the artifact before it could hurt her. Others wanted to study what was happening with their scanners and computers. But Maya blocked out their voices and focused on the task at hand. The patterns led her higher. Up the artifact's surface, each touch revealing new details. She could feel the device's history in the metal, the careful hands that had shaped it, the love and skill that had gone into every line and curve. The builders hadn't created this as a weapon or a test. They had created it as a gift, a tool, that could help future generations solve problems when their own technology failed them. "It's not fighting us," Maya said, her voice growing stronger. "It's protecting itself. It knows that advanced technology will try to change it, to remake it into something it's not supposed to be. But it trusts simple touch because that's how it was made." Maya's hands reached the middle of the artifact, where the patterns formed a complex knot of lines that seemed to pulse with their own rhythm. She pressed both palms against the surface and felt the device's core systems awakening after millions of years of sleep. The room filled with light, but this time it wasn't violent or destructive. It was warm and welcoming, like sunlight on a spring morning. Maya could hear the artifact humming with power, but it was a gentle sound, like a lullaby sung by a machine that had been waiting patiently for someone to understand it. "Maya, Amy," called out, her voice filled with wonder. "The communication readings are changing. The artifact is starting to broadcast on hyperspace frequencies." Maya kept her hands on the artifact, following the patterns as they led her to the top of the device. She could feel the machine's joy as it finally had someone to work with. Someone who understood that the most advanced technology was sometimes the simplest approach. "Almost there," she said, her hands moving to the final pattern at the artifact's peak. "And just a little more." The patterns converged at a single point, a small depression that looked like it had been made for human hands. Maya took a deep breath and placed both palms against the surface. The artifact sang with pure energy, and she felt the communication. Networks of 17 star systems suddenly spring back to life. The room erupted in cheers and alien celebration sounds, but Maya barely heard them. She was too busy listening to the artifact's final message, a simple truth that had been waiting 2 million years to be understood. Sometimes the most powerful technology is the one that remembers how to be human. The first message came through 3 minutes after Maya activated the artifact. It was from the mining colony on Kepler 442b, a simple text transmission that said, "Hello? Is anyone there? We've been isolated for 6 months." Within an hour, the communication networks were flooded with messages from across the galaxy. Trade ships reported their positions, families reconnected with loved ones, and governments began coordinating relief efforts for the isolated worlds. Maya sat on the floor, next to the artifact, exhausted but smiling as she watched the aliens celebrate around her. 17 star systems back online," announced Amy, reading from her datapad. "Communication is perfect. No interference, no delays. It's like the blackout never happened." Commander Ziegler approached Maya slowly, his massive form casting a shadow over her. For a moment, she thought he might be angry about her success. But when he knelt down beside her, his yellow eyes were filled with something she had never seen before: respect. "I owe you an apology, Lieutenant Rodriguez," he said, his deep voice unusually quiet. "I judged your species by the complexity of your tools instead of the wisdom of your minds." "I was wrong?" Maya looked up at him, surprised by his humility. "You weren't wrong to be careful. The artifact is incredibly powerful. If I had made a mistake, I could have made the problem worse." "But you didn't make a mistake," said Dr. Chun, joining them. "You solved a puzzle that stumped the greatest minds in the galaxy. How did you know what to do?" Maya touched the artifact's surface gently, feeling the warm pulse that had guided her. "My father taught me that every machine has a personality. If you want to fix something, you have to understand how it thinks, not just how it works." The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Scientists from every species in the galaxy came to study the artifact and learn from Maya's approach. The Galactic Council held emergency sessions to discuss what the discovery meant for their understanding of technology and intelligence. Maya found herself at the center of attention she had never wanted. News reporters from 100 worlds asked her the same questions over and over. How did you succeed where advanced technology failed? What made you think to try such a simple approach? I grew up fixing tractors, she would answer. Sometimes the simplest solution is the right one. But the real revelation came when the alien scientists finally understood what the artifact actually was. Dr. Yelanara, a crystalline being from the archive worlds, made the announcement at a packed conference in the station's main auditorium. The device is not just a communication hub, she explained, her crystal form sparkling with excitement. It is a teaching tool designed by the builders to help future civilizations remember the value of simple, direct problem solving. Mao sat in the front row, listening as Dr. Yelanara described the artifact's true purpose. The builders had foreseen That advanced civilizations might become so dependent on complex technology that they would lose the ability to think creatively about basic problems? The artifact's defensive systems were not designed to hurt anyone, Dr. Yelenara continued. They were designed to resist technological solutions that missed the point. The builders wanted to make sure that whoever activated their gift would have to think like they did, practically, simply, and with their hands. After the conference, Maya walked through the station's observation deck, looking out at the stars. She thought about the builders, working with stone and wood and simple tools to create something that had outlasted civilizations that could bend space and time. "Maya," called a familiar voice behind her. She turned to see Commander Ziegther approaching, but he looked different now. Less intimidating, more thoughtful. "Commander," she said, "how are the repairs going?" "The temporal engineers will recover completely," he said. "But that's not why I came to find you. The Galactic Council has made a decision. We want to offer you a position as head of a new division, the Intuitive Problem-Solving Department." Maya blinked in surprise. "I don't understand." Ziegther's scaled features shifted into what might have been a smile. "We've realized that our civilization has become too dependent on complex solutions. We need people who can think outside our technological framework. We need humans." "But I'm just a mechanic from Montana," Maya protested. "I fix broken things. I don't run departments." "Exactly," Ziegther said. "You see problems that our computers miss because you approach them with fresh eyes." The artifact proved that sometimes the most advanced solution is the one that doesn't need to be advanced at all. Over the following weeks, Maya worked with teams from across the galaxy to establish the new department. They set up training programs where aliens could learn hands-on problem-solving techniques. Maya taught Zephyrians how to feel vibrations in machinery without neural interfaces. She showed the Kithara how to diagnose problems by observing patterns. Instead of relying on biocomputers, the most surprising students were the quantum syndicate scientists. These beings who could manipulate individual atoms struggled to understand how Maya could fix a broken transport by simply listening to its engine. But they were eager to learn, recognizing that their own methods had limitations. "It's like learning a new language," explained Dr. Keximer, a syndicate researcher whose 3 eyes blinked independently as he tried to understand a simple multimeter. "We've been so focused on the quantum level that we forgot how to see the big picture." Maya smiled as she watched him work. "My father always said that if you want to understand a machine, you have to think like it thinks. Not analyze how it thinks, just think along with it." 6 months after the artifact's activation, Maya received a long-range transmission from Earth. Her father's weathered face appeared on the screen, grinning with pride. "Heard you're famous now, kiddo," Jake said. "Running your own department, teaching aliens how to fix things with their hands. I'm proud of you." "I just did what you taught me, Dad," Maya replied. "I listened to what the machine was trying to tell me." "That's all any good mechanic ever does," Jake said. "The fancy tools are nice, but they can't replace understanding." "Sounds like those aliens are finally figuring that out?" Maya looked around her new office, filled with simple tools from a dozen different worlds. Handmade wrenches from the builder archives, diagnostic equipment that required touch instead of scanners, and problems that needed human intuition to solve. "The universe is full of broken things waiting to be fixed," she said to herself. "And sometimes the best way to fix them is to remember that technology should serve people, not the other way around." Outside her window, the stars shone with the light of 17 restored civilizations, all connected once again by a simple truth that had waited 2 million years to be rediscovered. The most powerful tool in the galaxy was still the human mind. Working with patient hands and an open heart, Maya picked up her father's old multimeter and got back to work. There were plenty more problems to solve, and she was just getting started.